Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And we are back. And today we're going to talk about something that I get asked a lot in the coaching in particular, and especially I think from moms. This question.
A lot.
A lot. A whole lot.
A hole? Can we say that on the radio?
No, not that kind of. W-H-O-L-E. Whole. The whole kit and caboodle. Okay. Today we're going to talk about, how you can protect yourself. So how can I protect myself? And
body armor.
A gun,
Yeah,
I don't know. No, not that kind of protection. I'm just kidding. But where this comes up for people is that, a lot of times we have a co-parent who's trying to make us look bad.
Yes.
Right. Especially to the court. And so people spend a lot of time worrying that things the other person says or accusations the other person makes are going to be found credible by the court.
Mm-hmm. And
they have fear around how that will impact the court's decisions around custody and whatnot. And so I get asked this question a lot. And, I think as you chime in, you're going to have a few different tips here. But one of the things I tell people is that in this particular situation, the best defense is a good offense. And this kind of goes back to something that Thomas and I talk about a lot, which is that...
A lot.
I have to say it the same way every time.
No. I guess a lot is like super mega lots.
And a lot is just a little bit lot.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right.
When we talk about the best defense being a good offense...
Sorry for making fun of you down there.
It's okay. It just throws my brain off, and then I have a hard time getting back on track of what I was saying, but...
I have to say I'm sorry, or she'll make my life miserable later on.
Make your life miserable anyway. It doesn't matter.
Okay. So the best defense is a good offense. Go on.
Yeah. Thank you for that. At least I know you were listening, right?
Yeah.
Because it goes back to something you and I talk about a lot, which is that people get hyper-focused on the other parent and what they're doing and what they're saying, and they're not focused on their own stuff and their own relationship with the kids and their own, whatever.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
And so, we put all this energy into, oh my gosh, how can I protect myself from what this other person's doing? But really, in a certain way, you don't need to. You need to focus on your own thing.
So what you're saying is be proactive.
That's right. Because if you're being proactive and you're doing your thing and you're behaving the way you need to, and you're creating a bond with your kids and you're being nice to the other co-parent and you're doing all the right things, you're automatically going to have protection from those false accusations or whatever.
Right. Well, I think what a lot of people hear when you say the best defense is a good offense is they think, well, I've got to legal up. I've got to tell everything, I have to expose all of their faults. And in litigation,
I have to go on the hunt.
Hire an aggressive attorney, and that's not what you're talking about.
No, that's not what I mean. Because your offensive plan in divorce is not about going after the other parent.
Right.
Your offensive plan in divorce is creating your own fantastic world.
Yes.
And if you're building that world...
Hello, best dog in the whole world.
Yeah, you'll hear our little dog clicking through. You'll hear her collar. You might, if you're watching us on YouTube, you might see her
The
walk
best
through the
dog
video.
in the whole world had an accident in our Airbnb.
What is wrong with you?
What?
Why would you say that? What if your Airbnb person's watching? That's not good?
Yeah, I don't think so. What are the chances?
Yeah, it's all vinyl.
I mean, we only have 5 million viewers.
Yeah, it's all vinyl flooring, so it's super easy to clean up. But we're in Idaho and traveling this week, and she's a California dog. She's like,
yeah, it's cold out there.
It's cold. It's gray. I don't want to go.
Yeah, I'm just going to sneak into the basement.
We're having some
They'll
issues.
never know.
Only we do. But anyway, when you're going through this and you're so worried, I don't mean, by saying that, I'm not saying that there aren't things that you can do as far as, making notes or documentation and all that kind of thing. There is some of that, and Thomas and I will talk about that a little bit. But I think that the vast majority of people, the biggest mistake I see them make is they get so focused on what the other person is doing that their way of moving through their divorce becomes reacting.
Right. They become defensive.
Correct.
And that's the defense you're talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I think that puts you at a disadvantage in the court when you're reacting to the other person instead of being proactive in the positive aspects of your side.
Right. It's kind of like the Maginot Line in World War II. I don't know.
The what?
It's called the Maginot Line. It was a defensive. France's reaction to World War I was to build this incredible lengthy fortification along the border with Germany. And what they didn't realize was that the technology of the warfare was such that in World War I it was a very defensive war because of the advent of machine guns. But then with World War II, with the advent of airplanes and whatnot, tanks, it became much more offensive, and the Germans just flew their airplanes over the Maginot Line and attacked.
Took all the Frenchmen out?
Took them all out, yeah.
Wow.
So you have to kind of understand, I mean, in a way, the battle here is, you erect these defenses and you allow your opponent to storm right over them. When the defense is really, the best defense is to behave in a way that will get the court to see you favorably.
Right. Well, to behave in a way that there's nothing they can attack you for.
Yeah.
I had a friend who always used to like to say, it's about conducting yourself in a way that you're above reproach.
Yeah.
In other words, if there's nothing for somebody to accuse you of, or nothing to, and I know people make things up out of thin air and different stuff like that, but really arguments like that are just, fabricated out of whole cloth won't stand up to scrutiny, right. So you don't really need to worry about that. But, if you're above reproach and you're conducting yourself the way you need to and all that kind of thing, then your defense happens automatically. It's not something you have to try to construct.
Yeah, but your Blitzkrieg, if you will, is to do those things that nurture your relationships in the present moment and not focus on the attacks from the other side.
Right, which is where everybody gets focused. And then what happens is your anxiety goes up. You start making mistakes or doing things or saying things that you wouldn't normally say because you are so in a state of fear of, right. Their attacks. And so it just becomes sort of like this snowball, that takes over, and then, you make a mistake or two, and then that's used against you. And then, and we've talked before about how a lot of this feels very counterintuitive.
True.
When I'm working with coaching clients, it's like, I'll try to come at it from a different perspective, and they're kind of like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Well, why shouldn't I do this, that, or the other thing? And then I kind of back up and say, look, here's how the court views this. Yeah. And then people start to say, that makes sense. Right. And that's really the whole key of understanding is, how does the court look at things? And if the if one parent is saying something or accusing the other parent of something that the court just sees absolutely no evidence for, then that argument's not really going to hold water.
Right.
And I think people think unless the court goes, well, okay, let's say one parent, let's take something extreme. Like, let's say one parent's accusing the other parent of being a drug addict, let's just to take a really extreme case. The court, I think what people expect from the court is for the court to make some statement like, well, I find the other parent isn't a drug addict.
Right.
Or I find the other parent isn't crazy, or I find the other parent doesn't have bipolar, or I find the other parent, and that's not how it goes usually. It's usually kind of if nothing comes up about it, then the court probably didn't believe it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
right. Well, here's the way. I mean, I would flip the metaphor, because the parent that's baiting you into bad behavior, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
We're trying to is conducting an assault.
Right.
And your defense has to be, it's kind of like when you're on offense in football, your front guys are protecting your quarterback. And that's a good metaphor for what we're talking about. You have to protect yourself from that assault initially. And then that allows you to be proactive, which is to spot your receivers downfield and throw the ball or run your play or whatever. But if the guy in the front, if you don't protect yourself, then you can't execute the play, if that makes sense.
Right. So what's our first line of protection then?
All right. I think the very first line of protection is self-care. I think that's the big guys up front. In other words, so we're going to take steps to nurture ourselves, to feed ourselves good food, to get some exercise, to God forbid, have fun once in a while.
Yeah, smile, right.
And enjoy your relationship with your kids. I mean, to me, parenting's a blast. It's hard, but it's a blast.
Right.
Kids are fun. They're beautiful. It's like watching your kids grow up is like learning about things it's like being able to see something for the very first time. Mm-hmm. It's like, I remember the first time I took my kids to the beach. It was like, whoa. I mean, they were jazzed. They were psyched. And those are the kind of experiences that nurture you as a parent. Okay. Right. If you don't have a lot of parenting time, sometimes those are hard to come by, but they're not impossible to come by.
Right.
So number one is really, because if they can't throw you off your center,
meaning the other parent,
right? Then you can execute the play,
right?
Then you can do those things that the court responds favorably to, such as cooperating, such as putting the kids first, and such as not reacting, because the worst thing you can do in court is be reactive.
Right. That's true as the party or the attorney, right?
That's true in both, right? And we tend to be reactive,
right?
And I think that's where your original metaphor comes from,
right?
We tend to play defense,
right? And a lot of people that I am working with have been in defensive mode for so long that it's hard to get them to sort of make that mental shift into, you do you. That's kind of the moral of the story. Like, you do you, and you don't worry about them.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying don't, document, don't, have your evidence. Those things can be important too. But let that be driven by what your game plan is, not what you're trying to, I got to write this down because I got to protect myself in case he says this, that, or the other thing. You write this down because, you want to be able to tell the court about this, positive thing you did, or, whatever. The other thing I see happen in this regard is in this kind of mode to protect myself is, we talk about the parenting app communications a lot. Talking Parents and Our Family Wizard are the two most popular. And people start to feel the need to document their case in there. Or one parent accuses them of something and they feel the need to go in and counter that argument right in Talking Parents.
Right. And there's no need to do that. In a way, it's kind of like, and to use another football analogy, a lot of times the blitzing party, they bring up 8 men to the line and they try to terrify you into making a bad decision.
They bully you.
Right. So what you have to do is, in a way, let them cross into your territory and let them overrun your offense. Let them run too far, in a sense. And what I'm talking about is let them be the jerk.
Right.
They're the jerk.
Right.
Let them show their true colors.
Right.
If you're being defensive, if you're reacting to the threats that you perceive, then you're going to appear hysterical to the court, and the court's not going to be able to decide who's doing what.
And that's the problem. Not to kind of pigeonhole people, but moms in particular, I see this happen a lot. We get accused of being hysterical or overprotective.
Well, you are hysterical.
or whatever the
Watch,
case.
I'm going to push your buttons right now.
Or whatever the case may be.
I'm going to win this podcast, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, or I'm going to punch you out on camera, one of the two. But this is what happens, is you get hysterical, and it's almost like, because you're hysterical, it overshadows, it almost like shields the court's view of the other person's issues. And I think, and again, I mean, I'm kind of treading into some difficult statements, but I think that's worse when you're in front of a male judge. If you're a female in front of a male judge and you're being hysterical, you are really doing yourself in.
Right, yeah.
Because men don't come at things from an emotional component like that. And
well, law is really kind of in that sense, a masculine pursuit, in the sense that as lawyers, we're trained to evaluate the truth or falsity of various facts based on evidence.
Right.
And then we take those facts and we plug them into the law. The tort of negligence has 3 elements.
Right.
And so we try to figure out, are the elements there?
Right.
Has the plaintiff proved their case? And in this situation, when the court is trying to do a best interest of the child analysis, one of the things they're really thinking about, one thing that's always in the back of their minds, is which parent's cooperating here? Which parent gets it? Which parent is playing the game the way we're supposed to play it?
Right. And I find when you start doing that, you will see a shift. And it usually does happen, within fairly short order, but it doesn't feel like that to the person, I think sometimes. It feels like it takes a long time. But if you have this long history of 2 years of appearances where the two of you are going back and forth, and, the judge just you feel like the judge isn't really understanding what's going on. When you start to do this after a couple of appearances, I find it takes 2, 3, and you start shifting your narrative to the court into, look, I just am trying to be a good parent. I just want what's best for the child. And stop making about, oh, mom or dad are doing this, that, or the other thing. Then you'll start to see that difference. And I've had tons of clients come back and go, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And it's like,
you can turn your case around.
Yeah. It's like, this is what I was trying to accomplish. And one of the other things I wanted to speak to is, when you're making the counter argument to the other person in that Talking Parents or Our Family Wizard because you want that documentation there, what you're really doing is telegraphing your position, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're telling the other person all the counter arguments that you're going to make, so they can start
to prepare, right?
Yeah, pulling all that apart. And so you're almost doing yourself a disservice by trying to,
right?
Well, not almost. You're doing yourself a disservice by trying to, have this argument in Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents or whatever it is. And I find that for some reason people often think that something that's documented in there is evidence, but something that's documented, over here on a notepad isn't, Right. So I always tell clients, keep a log. Keep a log, write down anything that you think is significant. Later on, you can write a declaration about that. You can testify about it. You can whatever. It doesn't have to be logged in that parenting app for it to be quote unquote evidence in your case.
Right. So the first step is self-care and self-protection. And the corollary is not being offensive, not immediately being reactive to things. It's hard. The point I'd like to make is that that's difficult to do. It's very difficult to do. So if you're having an extreme amount of difficulty doing this, your next line of defense might be to cut off contact. And I don't mean cut off conversations about the kids, but I do mean cutting off face-to-face contact or voice contact, because those things tend to make your emotions flare up.
Well, and also cutting off conversations that are about arguing the two different points that you're disagreeing about. We see that in a lot of cases where people are on Talking Parents and they go back and forth for pages and pages about some issue that they're disagreeing on, and they're both trying to convince the other person of their position.
Yeah, well, that's... And
at some point you have to just agree that you disagree.
Well, what I'm talking about is when I was first going through my divorce, it was very difficult for me to interact or cooperate with my ex-wife because of the emotions that I was feeling at the time. Okay. And I really had to step back from communicating at all with her.
Right.
And
I think that's especially true in the beginning.
That's especially true in the beginning. Mm-hmm. One of the things I would suggest is that you have a trusted friend read your messages. Instead of reading them, just say, you know what, as soon as you see it flash up, have a friend read the message and tell you what it's saying. I find that over the years, Tammy's been really good for that. A lot of times, things that people say affect me emotionally, and it's easier to hear. It's easier to have it repackaged by somebody, and then get some advice too on how to respond. We always tell people that when you're communicating in a co-parenting relationship, you don't respond to emotional attacks. You only respond to the parts of the message that have something to do with co-parenting. But that's hard to do.
Right.
And so you need somebody who is objective to help you to do that.
Right. And that's a lot of what I do for my coaching clients. And I would say that it's not just being objective. It's also somebody who understands what the court wants and is bought into that.
Yeah.
I had a client that I started working with, and she had a close family member who had been very helpful in, being a sounding board for her and kind of keeping her grounded. But that family member still had a hard time not being emotional in the response because that family member was angry with husband too. Mm-hmm. For feeling like the husband blew the marriage apart or whatever. And so that family member was also angry. So even though the family member was helping her with the communication, it still was creating a lot of problems because it was too, attacking and emotional and all that kind of stuff. So I think you have to have somebody who's objective and also somebody who understands the game, and when I say that, I don't mean like, this situation is something to be taken lightly. That's not what I mean. This is probably the most important game of your life. But there is a certain strategy of how to handle.
This is the finals, baby.
Yeah. There is definitely a strategy of how to handle things. So, again, I think if there's any one core concept to take away from this, it's just that, if you're doing if you're doing, like Thomas said, you're doing your self-care, you're, being an involved, interactive parent with your children, you're being supportive of the other person's parenting, you're being nice, even if you don't like it, even if you don't like them, you don't agree, whatever, you just smile and nod and
just smile and wave, boys.
Smile and wave, boys. Yeah, that's from some little kids movie. I don't remember.
Madagascar. I think.
That's it. I think that's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Thomas and I, just a little fun side story. One of the kids got. This is when his kids were little, and they had the Madagascar toys in the
in McDonald's
Happy Meal, and they got one under one of the car seats one time, and it's just one of those things that you get in the car and you start driving, and then this little penguin would go off and he'd go, smile and wave, boys, smile and wave, and you'd be driving, and you'd think, oh, that toy's so annoying, I got to get that out from under the seat when I stop, and then of course when I stop, there's a million other things going on, and I don't think of it, and the toy stays there until the next time we get in the car and start driving, and then it's like, oh, that darn toy. So, but, if you're doing all the things that you need to do, then you don't need to feel like you have to specifically protect yourself in any way. And like I said, if you're worried about documentation, document. I don't think there's really any such thing as over documentation, in my opinion. You don't know what things are going to come up later and what's going to be significant, but do it outside of that talking parents so that you're not inflaming the situation and you're not making it look like you're trying to attack the other parent, which is something the court really doesn't want to see.
Well, really, I think in a sense the documentation is for your own peace of mind.
Right.
I mean, we have well, maybe I shouldn't say this in case she listens, but we have a file on my ex-wife.
Right.
And really, all it is kind of it's like my nuclear arsenal,
It's a CYA.
Yeah, and so just the threat of being able to launch my missiles makes me feel more powerful, makes me feel more in control of the situation. But I don't think we've ever used the file, not even one time.
Never used one shred of paper out of that file, no.
Right. So the best notes are the ones that you never use, but
right.
But if you are called into court, it's good to have some notes to refresh your memory so that you can give credible testimony.
Well, and like I said, you don't know what's going to come up, and I think that's what that's about, is you have this file of all your different things in case, so that way whatever does come up, you have some sort of documentation.
You have your Maginot Line.
Right. But I think that's what the question of how do I protect myself, I think that's what it's about. It's about what can I do to make myself feel better or feel like I'm able to...
Like you could control the situation if war broke out.
Correct. What could I do? And really, that's what that's about. It's about making you feel better, reducing your anxiety and all of that. So document all you want to. Just don't feel the need to document to the other person.
Right.
You don't need to do that.
And I think ultimately, and this might be a good place to close, but ultimately, the best way to protect yourself is to live your life. You mentioned before, do you.
Right.
And to do you have to know what you is.
Right.
And that requires some introspection, maybe some therapy.
Right.
But after you've figured that out, if you're living the life that God put you on this earth to live,
right,
then some jerk that's trying to push your buttons can't harm you.
Right. There you go. That's it. I think that is a good place to close. You're right. Okay, so thanks for joining us today. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that you get notified as more videos come out. If you are listening to the podcast in iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you're listening to us, don't forget to also rate and review us and subscribe to the podcast so that you can get notified of new episodes. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.